most of the early immigrants or colonizers to Liberia were free blacks, mostly from the north and from the Chesapeake. And they volunteered. And they usually had their way paid for by the American Colonization Society, which engaged in a massive fundraising drive among, mostly in churches, evangelical churches, both in the north and in the Chesapeake region of the south. So most of the early settlers were free blacks. Many of them were mulattoes. Many of them were mixed race people. Many of them were literate. These were, you know, from well-off families. So why would they leave? They left for a couple of reasons, for a few reasons. One reason, and the most prominent reason, I think, was just life was miserable if you were a free black in America in the early 19th century. You were treated as a second-class citizen. You had no rights. You were offered no dignity, no self-respect in this country. It was an incredibly racist republic. These people were feared, they were despised, even in the north, even in northern cities. Many of them had trades. Some of them were small-time businessmen, and they saw the opportunity to make money in Liberia. You know, there's a lot of goods coming out of the forests of Liberia. Camwood, which was an early form of red dye before the invention of chemical dyes, was a big export. Ivory, other African export crops. So business was the second motivation, right, for some of these people. The third motivation was that many of them were evangelicals themselves and believed that Africans needed the word of God brought to them. They needed the message of, eternal salvation and Christianity. And so some of them went for the purposes of liberating their fellow Africans, the people who they saw as their ancestors, from the darkness of paganism. So they were evangelicals as well. So there were, and some of them, of course, inevitably had mixed motives. They were motivated by Christianity, by business interests, and just to be free of slavery.
The colonial settler effect, that gave total authority to American Liberians, gave them a strong foundation to rule the country. While in Sierra Leone, the Creoles didn't have that privilege. To look at the power they have, in Sierra Leone, the British were still in control despite the presence of the Creoles, who were well educated. If to compare them to the American Liberians in Liberia, they were relatively well educated. They had total control over the exercise of authority on the native and the land now they control or possess. But in Sierra Leone, before independence, the Creoles still had some kind of dependency, on the British. The British controlled basically their life, their economic, social, political lives. So when we talk about power leading to independence, the British, at the end of the day, the British were already educating the natives in the interior after high school, because some of them went to government schools in the interior of the country. They would take them straight to England, where they went to universities, and a lot of them became doctors. And to point to that reality, the first Prime Minister of Sierra Leone, Samuel Mangai, had his education in England, just from high school straight to England. So on the day of independence, at the convention, the Creoles thought, we're going to be the only educated people, at the convention that will ask for leadership. And to their surprise, there were a lot of natives who already have doctoral degrees, who were, educationally very sound to compete with them. And to add more salt to the injury, they had more population to support them, because the Creoles are still considered in Sierra Leone as a minority.